I find really famous places and sites to be overrated. Don't get me wrong, this is a beautiful view, but I can't help but feel that I've seen this view before. It just isn't a new experience. But Jofi, you could say, you did see this before when you were a child. Way to ruin my train of thoughts, you. But you know that's not what I mean. I remember seeing the Eiffel Tower for the first time in Paris. It is undoubtedly a must-see sight, but I remember feeling nothing. I was neutral towards it, even though it is a beautiful structure with an interesting history. But I've seen it millions of times before. Not in real life per se, but virtually. Dozens and dozens of times. For me, somehow, a site becoming widely known ruins the experience of it. I know I would appreciate it much more if this site was indeed the first glance I ever got of the Grand Canyon. It is marvelous after all, but what you see every day will eventually become ordinary, mundane.
I've enjoyed the other canyons far more, but not just because I don't come by them so often. They are so unique in their own ways that it's fascinating to see how different, yet still similar, these places are.
I was especially astounded by the Antelope Canyon. Whenever I decided that from now on, I will put away the camera and just enjoy the experience, I saw something so gorgeous that I knew I wouldn't believe my own memories. And I wasn't alone with this. Everyone took dozens and dozens of pictures and videos throughout the whole tour.
Although this site might be an exception. I was eagerly anticipating it because I saw a few pictures of it and didn't believe myself that this place could exist.
I'm guessing this is how these sites get so famous. People just can't believe that they are real. They are so surreal. I myself started planning when I'd go back into the canyon while I was inside it. I'd gladly sit inside the canyon all day and watch the rising and setting sun change and play with the light. This made me question the hypothesis I just described earlier, though, and it made sense for it not to be entirely true. Surely, if there was nothing to enjoy about something, apart from the fact that it's famous, it would eventually fade and not be famous, right?
Well, not exactly. In fact, funnily, this was actually mentioned by our tour guide at Mesa Verde, who asked us to question ourselves why we visited the place.
Is it just because it was famous? Or was there some internal motivation for adventure, or history, or just interesting buildings that are not so easily accessible? And when I half joked to my mum how she was the real reason I was there, it suddenly hit me that I was being a hypocrite. All these places that I had visited before, all of them, without an exception, were not because of some inner motivation. Not because I was wandering around the area and I just found them interesting, but simply because they were famous. So the truth is a bit different then. There is nothing wrong with something being famous, and it certainly doesn't ruin the experience. This thought was in my mind when I was flying to New York. I'm not exactly sure why, but I was especially drawn to New York from the first moment when I saw it. And I have a couple of different theories why. Well, maybe I knew that there has to be some proper Wi-Fi somewhere in the city. It's tough being a nerd and living with almost non-existent internet connection for 2 weeks, but I don't think that was it. Maybe I knew that I had to spend 9 hours at this famous and exciting city, well, it was 10 in the end, without seeing anything but the interior of JFK Airport. If I would have been more adventurous in my life, I probably would have tried to do some sightseeing in those 10 hours, but being all alone with a heavy suitcase in a city I've never been before, it would have been way out of my comfort zone. But I still wondered for hours and hours, since I didn't have much else to do, what it would have been like going out on an adventure alone. This was where I tried to ease my mind back into its original position so that I don't go crazy, and I think I made the right decision. I was telling myself that I would have been disappointed in New York, And while it's not because of my original hypothesis, it's still true.
It might seem obvious, but it not only matters what places you visit, but who you visit them with. And I think it's beautiful that even one person can change a holiday drastically. That's all I have to say.